So, this is the beginning of Lacan's return to Freud. That is why Lacan was returning. That means he was making a repetition. Originally, when I am writing this paper, and when I probably will write it one day, I will give it the second title. Unconscious is structured like a language. Then after a colon I say, or the originality of a repetition. Shonar pathor bati. A round square. Lacan is repeating Freud, but by doing that, he is doing something original. This is called return to Freud. What does he say? Let us return to Freud from the clutch of the new Freudians. He said, let us drop the adjective new. See, you might think, oh, Lacan is surviving, is arguing for a revival. Is Lacan a revivalist? No, not so that. Lacan would not even, spare even Freud. His science alone can be our guide. But since Freud is a scientist, he is not a shaman or a charlatan, so we can use him as a guide. He says this, Freud knew very well what he was doing. Compare this with what Ernest Jones, Freud's biographer, said. He did not know what he was doing. Exactly. So, what is the object of, if psychoanalysis has to be a science, it has to have an object. Physics is a science, as we say, chemistry is a science. Even sometimes economics also claims to be a science, though I'm not absolutely sure if economics is a science. After studying economics for 14 years, I abandoned it, frankly speaking. I did not find that economics is a science. It has pretensions of science, by the way. Sociology also claims to be a science. There is anthropology and many other things. We'll talk about those. Now, if psychoanalysis has to be a science, it has to have an object of study. What do you study? And this is the unconscious, which you see I write with a capital U. It's a noun. Unconscious, so far in the English language, was used as an adjective. This table is unconscious, but I'm not talking about that kind of unconscious. The unconscious, Lacan says, I have here little book of Lacan's. It's called My Teaching. Those of you who would give their name to our list, I can give this book free to you by email. And I've already sent it to all ULA professors. In this book, Lacan says that my teaching begins at a place. Then he says, I teach about something called the unconscious. So what is this unconscious? Let's say the object of psychoanalysis, according to Lacan, is simply what Freud discovered, namely the unconscious. I know you'll have many questions. How Freud discovered it, that is not the topic of my lecture today. I wrote an essay on this called Freud Er Avishkar. Those of you who would like to read it, there is a booklet I wrote later. It's called Freud Pater Bhumika. There that essay is available. But I will answer your questions. Second, object. Then, if it is to be a science, it needs a method. What is the method? Lacan says, the method appropriate to study it means unconscious, is what Freud showed us, where to observe it. You will see, my friends, that I am deliberately making it very short. Where to observe it? There are many places to observe it, that I am giving you the royal place, the palace. This is our Taj Mahal in dream material. And in the speech of the subject, sometimes known as free association, primarily. Speech is the only material. When you speak normally, when you are talking to me, still you can guess, you are not always telling the truth. The moment you talk, you are also lying. Not that you are deliberately lying. That is our destiny, we have to lie. When you say, my name is X, you are also lying. I will come about that. Language necessarily lies, but it is by lying, it succeeds to tell you the truth. Yes, we will see. That is called the unconscious. How can you not escape the truth? And that comes out through the discussion. I'm using some key terms. Psychoanalytic interview, in which the doctor and the patient talks. And they talk for hours, for days, for hours. And they don't usually talk. Doctor knows the patient is lying, but he listens. He says that, then what next? So after all the lies are told, the truth comes out. And you'll see what it is. Then all the material available to the analyst is verbal. For example, what is analyzed is not the patient's dreams as such, but the patient's report of the dreams. When I say, tell me what did you dream, I really don't know what you dreamt. For two things, either you don't remember what you exactly saw, or you don't want to tell me what you saw. You are not sure. You say, oh, I don't remember, then it disappeared. So this report is the only material available to your doctor. Got the point? What is the material now? Our object is unconscious. Our method is the speech and the dream material. But how does the doctor have access to this material? Only through your narration. Here comes literature. All literature is narration. When Odysseus tells you that he saw his mother in the Hades and on his way from Troy to Ithaca, everybody trusts him because he's an European and a Greek. If a Bengali Muslim writer writes this, you won't trust him. Will say he's fantasizing. You know. Language. Here comes language. How can you speak without language? Speech is like a fireball, but it must be thrown from a gun, from a big cannon. So the cannonball without a cannon cannot be imagined. So speech without language is unimaginable. So he said, language. Freud spent so much time. Freud himself spent so much time analyzing linguistic associations, puns, slips of the tongue. I did not mention jokes, laughter, many other things. The psychopathology of everyday life is this book, small book by Freud, and another is called The Jokes and their Relations. Some translators say the joke and its relation. So, as a matter of fact, it is now true. We have discovered that Freud was a linguist of the first order, but this Freud did not know. He did not know what he was doing. He was taking the speech of his passions and subjecting them to the most minute analysis. Moreover, linguistic analysis is in fact the method appropriate to the study of the unconscious. Lakan concludes, because he said that Freud applied it. But one problem. Freud's big book was published in 1899, Interpreting Dreams. Die Traumdeutung, as it says in German, Khabnama, Akhtarjuman Elias, was written by Freud in 1899, in the last month. And let us make it round. 1 year before Lakan was born, that book was written. And Ferdinand de Saussure, those of you who study in the Department of English and also Humanities, they will probably know there was a man called Ferdinand de Saussure. His book was published in 1916, 16 years later. So how could Freud know about Saussure? Though Saussure's son was a patient of Freud later. That's another story. Clément Saussure was a patient of Freud's, but this Ferdinand Saussure, who died in 1913, his students took notes of his lectures. Probably it will happen to me, I think. My notes will be published by my students because I don't write enough. I write. So this was, therefore I say that Freud is absolved from the charge that he copied things from Saussure. But Lacan discovered that what Freud says in his own terms, psychoanalytic terms, unconscious, conscious, etc., exactly what Saussure is saying in terms of language, signifier and signifier. So the correspondence is amazing, striking. See here. Saussure 1916, I write the publication date of their books, and Freud 1899. Freud 1899 means Interpreting Dreams, and Saussure means Course in General Linguistics. The book was published in Switzerland. Now it is available in many English translations. Now everybody who knows a little bit of structuralism knows Saussure. This is the name, it's a Swiss name, French name, Saussure. It is difficult for us to pronounce it. And Freud is also a difficult name. Lacan proposes that Freudian terminology can be translated directly into the terms and categories of modern structural linguistics. Modern structural linguistics means what Saussure did. Our professors, Muhammad Shahidullah, Shuniti Kumar Chattopadhyay Namulak, they are all linguists, but they are not modern structural linguists. And in fact, there is hardly any in Bangladesh, by the way. Despite those who are Chomskyians, they are only half structuralists, and we'll come to this. Correspondence between Freud's terms means including systems and structures. A language is just not a word. It means a sentence also. As I said, the unconscious is structured like a language. This is a sentence. Sentence means there are rules. Professor Asfar Hussain, please come forward. Here is a place for you, sir.
I have shown up only to show my support and solidarity for this.
Thank you, sir.
In more than 3 things, and so I'm just moving from one thing to another, number one, and number two,
You have to leave.
I have to leave.
Yeah, I understand.
There's an orientation program in the English department.
Yes.
I'm dealing with Orientalists on the one hand, and with Orientationists on the other.
We will imagine ours is the Iceland language program here. So let us do a little bit hieroglyphics. So correspondence between Freud's terms, systems, structures, etc., all included, and linguistics is so close that Not only close, but striking that Lakan was led to this most startling of conclusions. I am coming at the end of my first section. The structure of the unconscious is the structure of language. So there is a striking correspondence between the two. Lakan says this by reading both Freud and Saussure. Freud did not have this advantage because he could not read Saussure. I mean, when he was writing his book Interpreting Dreams, he could not have read in all possibility. Okay. Now, here is Lacan's proposition. He says, then I begin with what is the object of psychoanalysis? Unconscious. That means a structure of our mind which is called unconscious by Freud. Now Lacan says that should be the object of psychoanalysis, nothing else. We shall analyze, we shall try to know how to reach the unconscious, which is not reachable. How can you reach it? That is called method. But only by analyzing the verbal material. There are two kinds of verbal material. One is when you speak, that is your verbal material. One is when you dream, that is your verbal material, because dream is narrated. And there are many other verbal materials. Okay. Language means verbal language. Some people often ask me, oh, bees have a communication language. We don't mean that language. A language which must have a structure, that means it is a grammar. It is a syntactic rule and rules of modification of words, which is called declensions, etc. If you have rules of grammar and you have rules of declension of words, then only then you have all a verbal language. So comes here. Because linguistics offers us the best model to account for the laws and structures of the material. That is why Lacan proposes that the best model for studying the unconscious is available through modern structural linguistics, not historical linguistics. That is the story, we'll come back. Linguistic analysis is thus the method appropriate to the scientific study of the unconscious, not just because psychoanalytic method is verbal, but also because linguistics offers us the best model. Linguistics is a science. Therefore, I told you, psychoanalysis is not only an analysis of speech. Speech cannot be delivered in vacuum. It has to be delivered from the field of something called language. Language is a field, this is the word, in mathematical sense of the term. A field of, there's a rings, field of such numbers, etc. Natural numbers, etc. So come, modern linguistics offers the one solid basis for the progress of, quote, I took it from another writer called Jan Miel from Yale French Studies. In 1977, there was a special issue called structuralism. I took this from there. A field which has been too long fallow, fertilized only by vague biological analogies and even vaguer adaptational psychology. This was what I have already called neo-Freudian psychology. In America, that psychology is still dominant. This is called psychological or psychoanalytic establishment. This is human beings adapt with their, this is also known as AWOL, American way of life, AWOL, right? And say this, he says this, a field, that means what field? Progress of a field means his psychology or ego psychology was, he said modern linguistics offers the one solid basis for the progress of these dead science. Until Lacan came up, psychoanalysis was their only name but not in spirit. And they were living this. They think that psychoanalysis is a branch of biology, etc. When I went to Dhaka University to teach psychoanalysis in the Department of Theatre and Performance Studies, they said that we have a department of psychology here. And for your kind information, my friends, go to their library, you won't find even the works of Freud there. They don't teach Freud at all, let alone Lacan. They don't know about Lacan. And I find many brilliant professors of the English department walking through my corridor say that, I don't understand Lacan. And he's so very much proud of it. Yesterday I overheard, I will not tell you the name, one professor asking another, sir, do you teach Lacan? He said, I don't even understand him, let alone teach. And he was very proud of that. This now comes. Now after the fact that we human beings have come to speak, and then what happens to us as animals? Am I trying to say that we are not animals? No, I never said this. We are speaking animals. So when I emphasize our speaking, formerly we used to call ourselves rational animals. What is rational? Sometimes I say, oh my goodness, I'm being killed by deadlines, like Aspar always tells me. Oh, too many deadlines. I'm going mad. I'm losing my reason. What is this reason that makes me mad? And what is this that I lose when there are too many deadlines to meet? I will say, let us come here. After language has now in the computer age, it is easy for me to tell, but it was not easy for Lakan to tell you in 1953. Cybernetics was just coming through. It says that when you reformat yourself, then you can use that disk which is destroyed. So it's like reformatting. After language has reformatted you, whatever has happened to you as an animal. You were born as an animal, now you have acquired language. After you start speaking, what happens to your drives? Your animal drives. That means you have hunger, you have to touch someone, you have to hear, etc. This does not mean that man is not biological. When I say man is a speaking animal, I don't mean that man is not biological. But the question is, what happens to your biology after you become a speaking being? It gets reformatted. I'm using a modern term. That we need abandon such a concept as the instinctual drive to understand him. Him means man. Please read him or her. Language is gendered, so I'm only using it this way. And you can understand psychoanalysis still is a bit gendered, but bear with that. The point is that the drive as it reports to the unconscious is no longer the organic mechanism it was, which the biologist can study and account for. It is verbalized, that means it is, if I may use the word liquefied, I can say linguified. And as a result, its structure is entirely different and needs different methods of analysis. Man cannot simply be studied like you study a cow. The difference is that the cow, with due respect to the cow, a sacred animal, I will kill you if you kill an animal in India, but not in Bangladesh. But I will devote myself to the cow for my whole life, but I will not compare a cow with you. Here is the problem. Because the cow does not speak. Whether the cow dreams, I do not know, but it cannot tell me whether it dreams. Here is the problem. Now we come here. If man is reformatted by laws of language, man, it is reflected in his instinctual life. Man does not marry his mother. Woman does not marry her brother. This is called structural anthropology. A man called Lévi-Strauss, who is 8 years younger to Jacques Lacan, published 2 volumes of essays beginning in 1945 at that time. And Lacan acknowledges that Lévi-Strauss is my master. Because I learned a few things from him. He may be 8 years younger to me. He says so. Similarly, say man's relation to society presents only vague and unfruitful parallels with the adaptational life of lower organisms. To account for this relation, one needs a structural anthropology as proposed by Lévi-Strauss. What is it? Man, the law of mating and the law of marriage is not the same law. The law of kinship is of a different order. The animals do not distinguish between their mothers and others, but men do. Here is the beginning. Incest prohibition is the foundation of modern society. And this is not only modern, of all society. Man became man only after distinguishing between them. In the beginning, mankind probably was incestuous. Otherwise, how do you imagine the structural myth of Adam and Eve? Think about this. How Adam breeded his family. And there must have occurred somewhere. And in the Christian mythology, it became known as original sin. But I'm not going to this. Now, what are they doing? If it is the conclusion, then what is the theory about human personality? Everything is to be designed. What we call personality is also known as ego. The word ego, as many of you know already, ego means I. Amitto, aham in Sanskrit, ego in Latin and Greek, I in English. So I say, let us go here. The new Freudian ego psychology, which was dominant in America at the time of Lacan's split. Thank you. Theory of the ego or theory of personality, you can read it alternatively, needs to be revised according to Lacan. If Freud's discovery of the unconscious is the fundamental discovery, I give a big if, and if linguistic method is the right method to understand the structure of man after he is a speaking being, and if his drive is no more instinctual but a drive, there are 2 words, instinct and drive. And then he says the theory of the personality has to also to be different. Man is no more an animal who is only seeking, let us say, what you call self-interest. Man can also make sacrifice. So these are the questions coming here, you will see. Let's go here. Theory of the ego needs to be revised to account for the dominance of language and linguistic structures in it. There is an error here. So if our personality is remodified, reformatted by language, then by language means by new laws of kinship and society, and they are parallel. So